back. It's the Sunday Puncher podcast. I have Jason and Simon with me. And let's go right into the Cotto Canelo fight. And yeah, we're going to get to the undercard, and we're going to talk about some of the other action that went down in Germany and in Britain. And then we'll recap some of the... we're not going to recap because I've already said that, but we're going to preview some of next week's fights. But first, so guys, I was looking at why did Canelo win, or how did he beat Cotto, and this is what I came up with. He watched Mayweather-Pacquiao and figured out how to beat a Freddie Roach fighter from that fight, and it was really simple. Canelo came out in the first round, immediately looked to get Cotto's respect, to even hurt him or knock him out really quickly. But once he did that, he changed how Cotto would approach the entire fight, much like the way Mayweather did with Pacquiao, where he threw out some heavy shots in the first round to let Pacquiao know what he was working with, so that Pacquiao was the one who had to adjust first. Basically throwing out what was natural and most effective for him, fighting at his own comfort level. And that's what I saw in the fight, and it completely worked because Cotto just didn't look like he had in his past couple of fights. And I wanted to ask you guys this question, and this is where I'll turn it over to you guys. In this fight, was it that Canelo was that much faster than Cotto, or was it so obvious or completely obvious that Cotto was fighting guys who are clearly faded or not good or just way too heavy for him? That because Cotto looked lightning quick in his last three fights, and now coming into this Canelo fight, Cotto looked slow and flat.
Yeah, I think Cotto probably did the best that he could do. I don't think it was one of those fights where you feel that now with the experience they'd do a better job of it. I think if they repeated it 100 times, you'd get the same result 100 times. I think that it was someone who tried their absolute best and put everything they could into it and came up short. And I don't know if I'd necessarily say he looked slow. I think that his work rate was frankly impressive, but he just failed to translate that work rate into anything, successful. He was working really hard throughout the fight, but not working smart.
I think what was interesting, especially if you look back at Cotto's previous fights at, quote unquote middleweight 155, is the power. The power just wasn't there against Canelo, and I think to just jump back to your point that you made earlier, Angelo, I agree that Canelo came out very strong, very fast, to prove a point. And that point was taken, by Cotto and his team. And it really set the tone of the fight right from the very beginning. But, and I agree with that, your assessment there, Simon, as far as you have this fight 100 times, it's going to look pretty much the same every time. Frankly, Cotto just wasn't on the level of Alvarez.
No, you know what was...
At that weight and that age.
Yeah, and there was something I noticed about Canelo, and it's something that I've seen for a long time in him, but it's so obvious with him now. Canelo's fighting, and you guys are not going to get this reference at all, but for those of you that do, Canelo has this Steph Curry-like swagger to him, and generally with the Warriors, where they're defending NBA champions, and they had this game on Thursday night where they were down by 23 points in the second half, in the second quarter, and they never panicked. And as the viewer, you just knew you were unsettled about that lead that the Clippers had because you knew they were coming back. No matter what the Clippers could do, the Warriors had something in them that they hadn't shown yet. They had just the way they exude confidence, and that's the same thing with Canelo, where no matter what Cotto did last night, even if he did land that left hook, and he did land his left hook, it was not gonna deter him at all. And I think that's part of what really had Canelo win, is that confidence, or maybe it's his stubbornness, because we've seen it backfire on him where he's completely stubborn and doesn't switch a game plan that's not working. But
I think that's very true about whatever sport that is. But I think that we see it a lot where someone's power is romantically emphasized when they're on the way up fighting faded people or journeymen or whoever it is that they're fighting. But, you can count on one hand the amount of times that freakish power has been successful in the higher level of the sport.
Right, it always dissipates. But I expected it to have somewhat of an impact on Alvarez. I didn't expect, Cotto to go in there and knock him out, but I expected Cotto to be able to gain his respect.
It seemed
and he
like
didn't. Like
no.
Alvarez had no respect for Cotto's shots. I expected at that level with two quote unquote, elite level fighters, if you want to say as much. The respect for the power is typically there, right? I didn't see that from Alvarez.
No,
and,
I was going to say, it wasn't... In fact, he disrespected him by every time he was hit with something big. He came back stronger and faster with his own big shots to let Cotto know what his place was in the fight.
Yeah, and it was just, granted, the Cotto that we saw coming up in middleweight was a mirage, and that's been...
Absolutely.
Cemented at this point. I still thought he carried enough power from what he was doing, and this was a point that you had actually made, Simon. He was doing extraordinary things to fighters, right? Like he was, knocking fighters out, and he was making them quit, and he wasn't just like beating them; he was like doing everything right in his tiny middleweight run of 3 or 4 fights.
Well, this leads me into another question for you two. You guys, so Jason, you picked Cotto, and Simon, yesterday you were much more convinced than you had been previously that Cotto might win. So what did you guys see?
Strangely. I'd underestimated Cotto in terms of his size and his ability, and so I gave him like next to no chance. And I think that when I was doing sort of my pre-fight, where I'll watch their maybe last 5 and check it out, I think that I gained a little bit of balance and thought, you know what, he has more of a shot at this than I'd credited him with.
That's what I felt. I felt like he was being really undercredited by the general public, but obviously he wasn't. You know what I mean? And I erred on that and was like, hey, let me try to like pick an upset, and because I really thought he would have had it to be able to pull an upset. Because I do think he was undervalued, but apparently he wasn't. I think Canelo was overvalued, though. As much as Cotto was undervalued, I thought Alvarez was overvalued. And this was the first fight for me that he really proved that he could hang at a very high level. Just speaking for myself.
I don't agree with that completely, because I think that Lara is a much trickier fighter than Cotto, with the same amount of power probably, because we've seen what Lara's done to people's faces before. What he did to Angulo, Canelo couldn't even do to him. And Canelo landed way more.
But he looked like crap against Lara. He did not look good in that fight.
Well, that was a really poor style matchup. But the way Canelo was able to stay in that fight, it speaks to like Canelo can hang at the top level, because we do agree that Lara's a very good fighter, despite our difficulties staying awake during his fights. So I'm just saying that Canelo was ready for the top level, and it was obvious before this fight.
I disagree. I think this was the first time that he really showed. I think the Lara fight, it was too close. Like, it was not, he didn't do anything exceptional enough, but we don't really need to get onto that.
Well, I blame Cotto for that, because Cotto kind of stood still for a lot of the time. His side-to-side movement was not, I know for a fact, it's not what you were anticipating, because you pointed out last week that the movement, but, Cotto just doesn't move like that. Lara takes big strides. He's always moving. Cotto almost moved yesterday, and it in general moves just to move. He's always bouncing around. But what purpose does it have other than waste energy? For the most part, it doesn't do anything. And I think last night, well, I want to transition into the next thing. So Dan Rafael made a big deal about the contract containing rematch language. At this point, is it necessary? In general, a rematch.
I think that if you watched it and thought that it could go the other way in that fight or in another, then you'd be in a very small minority. And with that being said, I don't think it'll translate to exceptional sales if repeated, because so many people that watched it the first time will have had their fill of that story.
It better not. It absolutely better not. All roads lead to Golovkin. Like, nobody wants to see a rematch of this.
What do you guys
There was
think?
nothing that
Go ahead.
left me feeling that it was at all even that very competitive. You know what I mean? Like, it was a fight that had some tension and, a little bit of drama, but for the most part, Canelo felt, in my opinion, Canelo was in control,
What do you guys think of Cotto walking out on the interview and not doing one after the fight?
I struggled to see that. You'll have to fill me in a bit.
Well, that post-fight interview, they stand in the ring and get interviewed by Max Kellerman, and Max Kellerman abuses them if he wants. I mean, if they're Manny Pacquiao. Canelo did his interview. Cotto immediately left the ring and was not available for an interview after in his locker room.
Yeah, that's typical Cotto. He did the same thing after the Trout loss.
Well, he got outclassed in the Trout loss in his defense.
We've seen him be a diva in the past, though, haven't we?
Yeah, he did the same thing. So I mean,
Not just
what did Sergio call him? Could somebody fill me in? What was it that Sergio called him during the face-off? Oh, it was a diva, right?
A diva, yeah.
What do you guys think as far as, like, was there anything Cotto could have done differently to maybe have swayed this in his favor? Apart from, because the easy answer here is, well, land a big left hook to the chin.
No, I don't think so. I think that there's no wrinkle to his game that would make this a closer fight.
I think adding a little more, effective lateral movement, but the problem that I saw, the biggest problem that I saw for Cotto wasn't anything that is rectifiable via a game plan, and it was just straight up a power issue. He was not able to gain that respect, and that's not going to be fixed with a game plan.
And
if you can't get
as
the
well.
kids' power, yeah, exactly. If you can't get the kids' power, gain the kids' respect, like, you're done.
All right.
He also didn't come out thrown to the body early either. He was rather conservative, which kind of led me to
he might
believe
have been a bit weary of that right hand that Canelo was hitting him with.
exactly, which led me to believe he was probably, mentally maybe not in the best place very early on in the fight.
Yeah, and I think that's completely what Mayweather had tried with Pacquiao and Canelo effectively did with Cotto. And Simon, is there any way that you think we can blame Freddie Roach for this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the putting all your stock in a left hook, going head hunting, bobbing up and down rather than using head movement. These are all symptoms of an illness. And the problem is with this one is that I don't think that any other trainer or technique would have made a difference. So I think the technique and approach was flawed, but it wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. I think that straw was the physicality, the age, the hunger and aggression within Canelo was just overwhelming, and an older Cotto couldn't deal with it, couldn't find a way to calm it and put a lid on it.
I think essentially.
Would you
go ahead?
Would you guys agree? Like, I felt I saw a Canelo that was fighting at a higher level than I've ever seen before.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that you always have to kind of step back when it's Canelo and think that this is a kid that's like, what is he now, 25, 26? And
25, yeah, 26.
Come on, some of the hottest people in the sport in terms of talent haven't turned pro by that time, or have just turned pro and are working their journeyman. Here's someone who, a few years back thinks about his title fight with Floyd Mayweather, one of, pound for pound top of the sport. So, someone so young, he's done so much, and people think that we've got the finished article, but there's possibilities for him to grow and mature and enter new phases. And I think we saw a better Canelo than we have before, and hopefully that's a sign that he is maturing.
I'm going to disagree with
you, Simon. That's the point I'm trying to make. Hold on. That's the point I'm trying to make, and maybe you could disagree with this as well, is that I saw a Canelo that actually that did look a little bit different. And what I had typically seen is a Canelo who, has an inability to cut off the ring, who, showed the same flaws from fight to fight and nothing was being fixed. Maybe those flaws just didn't get pulled out of him by Cotto, because Cotto wasn't really using a lot of effective, lateral movement or anything like that. So we didn't have to see Canelo use that kind of game plan. But I don't know. There's something about that fight. I think I saw a different angle to Canelo, one that I haven't seen given, his relative young age. You hope to see it, but I had never seen it before until last night.
Well, first, Canelo has more experience in the ring than Cotto. Like, the numbers don't lie. He's fought more rounds and more fights. Secondly, I think the reason why Canelo looks so mature, and that's why that's a narrative that's really popular out there right now, is due to the fact that Canelo's last 5 opponents were all very similar. So you had 3 guys who moved laterally, were slick defensive fighters, right, and then the other 2 were, for lack of words, just standing there, trying to get hit. And he destroyed them. So this is the first fight we've seen Canelo fight in a really long time that was just brought a different style, like a boxer puncher, somebody who could actually do a bit of moving, who could punch, who had a jab, who wasn't going to run away from him, who wasn't going to defend the whole time and just counter. And that's why it looks like he matured, but I think this is the Canelo that's been there the whole time. It's just we haven't seen him in this type of matchup. Because I think
this is the type of style that brought this out. You're saying that's been in there all along. It just took him fighting somebody who wasn't obsessed with lateral movement or obsessed with standing still to see this.
Without moving their head, yeah.
That's not even a joke. Yeah, no.
No, I know, but I just imagine, a punching bag with arms and legs, is a funny thought.
Cinder blocks feet, yeah.
All right. If not Golovkin, next, because do we really need to say anything about that? But if it's not Golovkin,
Golovkin destroys him.
I just don't see promotionally. You know that he as a fighter would happily go in there and take that fight, but the handlers dealing with, I can't see them being reckless enough to allow that to happen.
Well, I think they should try building that up. I think this pay-per-view might break a million buys, and a Golovkin pay-per-view probably doesn't even break a million buys. I mean, if he's doing 125 against Lemieux, I highly doubt that's going to do over a million.
I think you're using silly maths to get there. I mean, the fight is what sells, and people are interested in Golovkin, but they want to see him against someone that they consider a sort of pro, excellent fighter in the scene. I think Lemieux bringing very little fan base globally means that people don't see it as a real challenge, but you stick someone like Canelo on that bill and people are going to tune in droves because they think, okay, this is the real deal now.
Canelo and Cotto were the 2 biggest stars in boxing. So I understand that there is a lot of people who like Golovkin, but there are not a lot of people who love Golovkin to the point that they're willing to spend $60. And that's what the Lemieux fight proved. And I don't think that them fighting right now does anything to get a bigger number than this Cotto-Canelo fight. I think you're crazy if you think that Golovkin versus Canelo does a bigger number than Cotto-Canelo. Golovkin, it just doesn't have the draw that a Puerto Rican superstar like Cotto brings to the table. I think it can get there, though.
How? Do you think how does it get there without fighting Canelo? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, Golovkin needs that fight to bolster Simon's point. If Golovkin keeps fighting pay-per-views against the likes of the Lemieux of the world,
basically
that's
like this.
Not going to.
Canelo and Cotto have to keep not fighting each other because that builds controversy and interest, just the way Mayweather-Pacquiao did. The fact that they didn't fight each other just got more people interested in the other. It started more arguments everywhere where people were forced to pick a side on who they felt was in the right.
This is nonsense. We can't live in a scene where that's taken as the way things should work. We can't be saying
it's acceptable.
It's responsible promoting, or it's the best financial decision to not do the most competitive fight so that people get impatient and desperate for it. That's a terrible message to send. You want us to kind of get to the point where if it isn't the fight that's immediately made next, I start boycotting their career and I won't watch you deliberately out of spite because you've been managed terribly, in terms of entertainment business. It's a sort of fan commodity, and they're deliberately holding out on the fans. If they follow that road, they're deliberately putting out a lower quality product to make you hungry for a fix of the better stuff. And sickeningly, it worked with Mayweather Pacquiao. And as fans, we kind of I think we need to lead the charge on not letting that happen. If you routinely dodge the most competitive fights and do other things to let a fight, quote unquote, marinate, then you're dead to the fans. You get abandoned and exiled.
That's not going to happen, right?
I know it's not.
Canelo.
It's not something that's going to be black and
Canelo,
white, but it is something that you can make a dent into.
Well, I mean, if people don't start sharing the podcast and leaving reviews, that's not going to happen, and we can't lead any charge here. And I agree. I think that that's something that we should do as fans, but I'm just speaking from the business perspective. Like, what do we know? We know that these are business people. These aren't just people who are like, okay, let's do what's best for the fans because they're the ones who make us money. No, they're going to do what's best to maximize dollar, because at the end of the day, these guys want to make money, except for Canelo, who wants to fight.
Except for Canelo. Exactly. So I don't know. Canelo's done it before. He was stupid and he took the Mayweather fight, but he got paid really well. He was stupid and he took the Lara fight. You know what I mean? So
I think it was clever to do that. He lost nothing by losing to Mayweather.
He lost nothing by losing Mayweather. He really didn't lose much by even having a close fight with Lara, because he maintained his record. He won the fight.
Well, and everybody saw that Lara lost that fight because he didn't really try to fight.
Right, Lara didn't do much. They both lost that fight. There was really no winners, except the real winner.
Actually, they did win. I lost because I wasted the time on it.
Yeah, well, Canelo's stock as a throwback fighter did gain some. He did gain there because he got a ton of accolades thrown at him, because who the hell wants to fight Lara? Same thing right now. Who the hell wants to fight Golovkin? I can't think of anyone other than Canelo.
I think Sergio Mora. Let's just keep giving him the credit that he deserves. He's been calling him out for a long time. And I agree. I said weeks ago that Canelo is the dumb enough guy.
Business aspects, sure.
Yeah, and I'm just looking for business. But Canelo's the guy who's going to say, I'll fight Golovkin. I don't care what you guys try to make me do. I'll fight you too, Oscar. I'm fighting Golovkin.
That's what I'm saying. And I don't think Oscar has too much control over him. I really don't.
Well, we'll see.
I think it will be Alvarez. I think it will be Alvarez who decides.
You think in his next fight it'll be Golovkin?
No.
I'm not sure about that.
What I think will happen is I think it will be early 2017. I think he'll wait 1 year, fight 2 times over the course of that year.
Who's he fighting in those fights?
Chavez Jr.
Yeah,
please,
right, at what?
Come on. You guys know you want to see that fight.
It's not. It's ridiculous. It's not happening. I mean,
the
ghost of Chavez Jr. is going to cut down, or Alvarez is going to.
No, he's going to say, "Come in however heavy you want. I don't care."
Why are we even talking about this?
This is silly. This is an absurd.
Because you guys don't know what it was like to be in Southern California when these two guys were still really young, and all the fans here who liked boxing were split between the two sides. And the fantasy was that someday these two would develop the way they were supposed to, and then have this huge fight. Basically, the old generation of fans and the new ones. I know, but it'd be so funny. I just want to see Chavez Jr. lose again.
He can't.
Then
he can't
stick
even
him in with Tony
anyone.
Bellew.
Yeah.
Oh God, no. Tony Bellew even loses in movies.
No, I really, realistically, who do we fancy for? I feel like it'll be someone in the top 10 of Super Welter will be his next fight.
Absolutely. Yep.
A Charla and Andrade, someone like that.
Not either of those guys, maybe Andrade, but Charlo's over with PBC, so that's not going to happen.
Not Andrade.
I think we tried to do this last week, and we really couldn't come up with anybody. I think we've settled on welterweights coming up.
Yeah, we had to go to welter.
Maybe Michel Soro gets lucky and he gets his shot.
Or Highland. What's his name?
Jorge Highland. That's a middleweight from Argentina.
Yeah. The WBC. He's the number 1 or number 2 WBC. Alvarez could do a title defense against him easily.
That would actually be pretty cool because he vaporized Matthew Macklin. You remember, Simon?
So.
Yep.
So that's one viable fight, and then who knows 6 months from then what would be a viable fight, but that's at least one viable fight for him. Is his number one, his number one mandatory actually is Golovkin, so they'll pay him step aside money and
Actually,
whatever,
his number one mandatory isn't Golovkin anymore, since was the WBC belt even up for grabs?
Yes, the WBC belt was up for Alvarez only.
Oh, it was like the Mexican who wins gets the title. That sounds about right. That's why we don't recognize them.
That was Cotto's decision to not want to pay sanctioning fees
because he's not
Mexican.
Mexican.
It was a business. Well, no, it was a business mover more than anything.
It was a smart move.
He didn't want the sanctioning fees, right? Exactly.
He's on his way out.
He knew he was going to lose. He was on his way out. Let me save 3% of $30 million. It's well worth it.
It's actually 15 now that we have learned. But guys, let's talk about some other stuff since it's like 25 minutes in.
I want to hear you say that Golovkin beats Alvarez.
I don't make picks.
I know you don't.
Takashi Miura versus Francisco Vargas. So was this an early stoppage? That's what everybody wants to know. Was it an early stoppage? So you know who we're going to ask about this? We're going to ask the guy from Britain, who is no secret to the early stoppage. So, Simon.
Home of the early stoppage.
Was Miura Vargas stopped too early?
Pilot on. Sorry, was who?
Was Miura stopped too early last night?
So, obviously, I've voiced before that I'm a big fan of the fighter's safety, and 9 times out of 10, if there's an early stoppage allegation, I'm on the other side of the fence that it was stopped fine and could have even gone earlier. Otherwise, you get silly situations where someone gets really hurt. I don't think that this situation, though, qualifies under that, and I would have liked it to go on slightly longer. I don't think that he was in real mortal danger or trouble. He was certainly in panic zone and didn't know where he was and was struggling, but he was competitive in the fight up until that point. We weren't watching a one-sided beatdown. He'd been able to hurt his man. He'd been able to, work the face and get reasonable success. So I think that it would have been good to see him have the ability to try and dig deep and gut through that round. And I don't know if he'd have been able to do it, but I think there's a chance. And I think that if there's a chance they can do it and go on to win, coupled with the fact that he's not in imminent danger, I think you let that run.
You agree, Jason?
I'm not as I wouldn't be as passionate about it as Simon was. I didn't think the stoppage was horrible, but I could certainly see why people thought it was a little bit early. But given that Miura was having success in the fight, if it was one of those things where it was a one-sided beatdown, you know what I mean? But that wasn't the fight you were watching. You were watching a pretty back-and-forth, pretty competitive fight. And those are the fights that you like to see go on as long as possible.
If the roles were reversed, do you think he'd have stopped him? Do you think he would have stopped Vargas in the same way?
Vargas. That's so.
If he had him hurt that bad?
If it was exactly identical fight but reversed, do you think that
Vargas
on this card, with the context of who's fighting and who's watching and what's interesting, do you think that Week steps in on Vargas?
I think he wouldn't have had the chance because Miura would have finished him.
The way to
That's not why I asked. I said
maybe I misunderstood your question, but if you said if the roles were reversed, Miura would have finished him.
No, in this universe that I'm creating, it's the identical fight, just from the opposite perspective. And so exactly what you saw last night happens, but the other way around. Do you think at that moment, Week steps in and stops Vargas?
I think so.
I don't.
You think so?
Yeah,
I'm not sure, because Vargas has the name recognition.
To who?
Plays a role.
To who? You know that Vargas has never fought on, like, anything? He's a 30-year-old prospect who doesn't have a world title.
And Takashi Miura is the toast of Mexico, I'm sure.
Francisco Vargas isn't even fully a Mexican fighter. He was based out of Arizona, I believe.
I don't know how fastidious
Cotto was
people are
born
about
in
that.
Rhode Island?
Yeah, I did know that.
Cotto was born in Rhode Island. This was Rhode Island versus Mexico, people.
Exactly.
Never mind.
No, you see my point, and even if you don't agree,
I see your
would have
point.
not
Yeah.
stopped. Even if you don't think that you think, yeah, he probably would have stopped Vargas too. Fair enough, but you at least had to pause and think about it, and that alone should let you know that there's something to this.
I was pulling for Miura in this fight, but I didn't have a problem with the stoppage because I thought that if it goes on, Miura could get really hurt, and I know that Miura, it's typical of him to block punches with his face, and you do have to take that into consideration. But at the same time, like those legs, that look on his face of like he looked like a guy who was drunk trying to convince a cop that he was not drunk. It's like, dude, like you're like the fact that you're trying so hard is hurting your case here. But what about a rematch?
Well, I'd love one, and I hope that one happens. But I get the feeling that after that, why would you do it again if you're Vargas's team?
I get the sense too that this is kind of like Bradley Provodnikov, where it's like, oh yeah, you guys would love a rematch, right? Well, that might be a little tough because he lives in Japan.
Yeah,
but Miura, if he really wants to take a beating like that again, because he did like win lots of rounds and hurt and drop Vargas, he could do the same thing to Uchiyama, and he could get hit back harder too.
And you'd love that too, but I don't see it happening.
You don't see either one happening?
No, sadly.
Well, Uchiyama has said that they've been saying that they want to do a rematch in the near future. And so I'm holding out hope. I don't care what is likely to happen here, but I'm holding out hope. Because Miura definitely deserves another shot at the world level on that top flight level. Because he's proven consistently for the past couple of years, he's like at that level. He belongs. And do you guys think Vargas really stepped up and showed that he's also a world level fighter?
Yeah, I think so.
Jason?
Yeah, I think he did a good job of, recovering and fighting a really tough fight. You know what I mean? He showed that he wasn't there to quit. He wasn't there to, just turn over. And I saw him really take a pounding, honestly. The way that I was watching the fight is Vargas was really on the opposite end of things for most of the fight. But he was able to come through and pull it off. So yeah, I mean, you're fighting at a high level there.
Yeah, I agree. I think Vargas pretty much confirmed what I'd been thinking about him for a while, and I just never really was sold because it's like you've beaten up Jerry Belmontes and Abner Cotto and Juan Manuel Lopez's ghost. So, but beating Miura like this, despite his face was bad. As far as face really injuries goes, it ranks up there. His eye looked like it was gonna pop.
He was he took a lot of punishment. He took a lot of hits.
So let's jump on to Rigondeaux since we're already halfway through what we really want to do in time.
Do we need to do this?
How about I just talk and then you guys listen and then you guys can talk about whatever you want.
Fair enough.
Go ahead.
All right. So HBO praised the hell out of Rigondeaux to start. And it seemed like about round 4, they started to backtrack.
Mm-hmm.
And Lampley was like, "Wait, no, this is bull." and Harold Letterman was like, "Oh, this is ridiculous." And Max was like, "Oh yeah, guys, that might but I love Rigondeaux." And
I still love him.
It's when you've got your friend round and you're showing them a piece of music you really like or a piece of comedy you really like, and you're looking, trying to get a reaction out of them, hoping they're going to love it. And as you see their face, you start realizing, oh, this isn't working. This isn't as good as I thought. Oh dear, and then you're kind of left in this awkward situation because you've brought it up. You've said, "Here, look at this. This is noteworthy," and then have to stand there feeling silly while it's clearly not noteworthy.
And then Max was that guy who just stuck to his guns. He's like, "Nope, guys, this is a purist dream." I think for me though, it wasn't that the fight was boring, and it's not that he won because he did, but that wasn't the real issue I had. The issue I had was that he failed to get in gear and look like an elite fighter at any point. And you can't say at any point of that fight that Rigondeaux was being dominant. He wasn't. He not at boxing.
Minimal possible effort. He looked at what was required to edge around and did 1% higher than that minimum expectation.
I'm not even going to go that far because...
Hold on. Not for nothing, he hasn't fought in a year, and like he took this fight on pretty late notice, right?
Yeah, but he's spoken about, you don't get that. You don't get that excuse. Andre Ward didn't get that excuse. Floyd Mayweather didn't get that excuse when these guys took years or more off of boxing. So neither does Guillermo Rigondeaux, who fought 9 months ago. And so, but what he just did was defended.
It wasn't 9 months ago. It was December.
Okay, so it was 10 months. It was December 31st.
11 months.
And so, but the thing was, he wasn't even landing punches like very often. Like, he landed an average of 7.2 punches a round and at 20%. What elite fighter fights like that?
Punches per
he landed 7.2.
Francisco. So in his last 2 fights, Francisco's knocked out in the first round someone who was 13 and 23, and then gets knocked out in the first round by someone who's 23 and 5. And so you think about that, okay, yeah, I know what sort of fighter we're talking about here. And then when you think, for someone who's supposed to be ranked, in the top positions within their division, you think this is going to be an absolute shutout knockout. And for it to be a slow, slightly edged fight each round, and it of course it was a shutout, but it wasn't someone who was trying. It was someone who was, I don't know what he thought he was doing. It was like he was suited better to dodgeball last night than to boxing.
It would have been more interesting if, like, Lampley, Kellerman, and Jones picked some people out of the crowd and said, let's play dodgeball. Yeah. And the crazy thing is Rock Nation... Yeah, 7.2. 7.2 a round averages to 2.4 per minute. So, and that's not power punches. That's total.
Just 2.5 total punches per minute.
So Rock Nation has him for 4 years at $10 million. You think they could have spent their money a little wiser?
Yeah, he looks like a $10 million. Sure.
He's going to get $2.5 million a year, which is like a little more than $1 million for each fight. That is ridiculous. Al Heyman would shake his head at that.
Everybody's off the Rigondeaux train after one performance that quickly?
No, it's not. Yeah,
he's still skilled. This isn't a criticism of his skill. It's a criticism of his showmanship and approach to the business. And he clearly isn't interested in making a statement or gaining fans or being recognizable. And with that in mind, as his promoter, it's your job to find a murderer's row of people to throw him in with that aren't going to be able to lay a glove on him. Because at least then, when you've got someone like a Donaire trying to work him, you are aware of what's happening because he's being able to be so evasive and get rid of, that works perfectly. It's a beautiful recipe. But when you get someone who is, frankly, unrecognizable or, not even probably in the top 100 within the division, it doesn't work because Rigondeaux's not going to try and the other person's not going to have any chance.
Yeah, they need to get a guy I think they need to get guys that are basically going to fall into his trap. Just guys that are going to bring activity because he's clearly not going to do it. So get Chris Avalos in. He might lose. He's probably going to lose. But at least you're going to be like, you know what? You know what? Yeah. That guy gave it his all. And Rigondeaux just, did Rigondeaux stuff. Like, get a guy like that. I don't foresee anybody at the top level really wanting to take a fight with Rigondeaux. I mean, what's Darchinian doing? Can we get him? Darchinian is the kind of guy that'll mess around and actually land his left hand and drop Rigondeaux in the first round.
Right.
I mean, that's where we're at with Rigondeaux. And I'm not trying to criticize him. I think Rigondeaux...
No, you're coming...
I'm just saying that he's boring. It's like, dude, come on.
Can they not just bring Donaire back repeatedly?
Hey, I'll take that rematch over what we just saw because Francisco was out of his depth.
And Donaire's not doing anything. He's not got anything in the calendar.
He's fighting...
Just
next
do that monthly.
It'll help him make weight too.
I should rephrase that. He's not moving anywhere interesting. He's not making steps. He's kind of just continuing to exist.
He's not trained by Freddie Roach, right? You don't have to be that critical of him.
I'm critical of people, and it's not even a criticism. He's had an interesting career, but I think that he's peaked and he's reached that stage where you can put him out to pasture and continually fight Rigondeaux.
They should just take that show on the road. They could just go to fairs and
on the road.
carnivals.
As
Rigondeaux versus
exhibition
Donaire.
matches. Yeah.
A 4-round thriller from Manila.
Yeah.
Wherever Donaire's from.
I think should start letting kicks in or something. Yeah.
Maybe then Donaire could touch him. All right, we got to start flying through these topics, guys, because we've gone very long. Let's start with in Germany. You really can't have anything more to say about Rigondeaux, really?
No. Just Jason Velez.
Good fight. Bad performance from Velez. Great performance from Ronnie Rios. Just
Rios. Rios' best night. It was like it was fun to watch. Really fun fight to watch.
But what kind of fight was that, Simon?
Moving on.
No, I was hoping to get a different answer out of you, but okay. So Martin Murray challenged Arthur Abraham for basically the top spot at the super middleweight division in Germany. It was a close fight. I think Murray basically did what most fighters do when they go fight German fighters in Germany, which is they stupidly let them set the pace, they punch at their guard, and then wait for them to hit them back. Did you see a different type of fight that I saw, Simon?
I don't know. How do you read it? Like, what was your take on it?
Well, I mostly thought that Murray did a good job at, staying active and throwing punches, but he really just let Abraham fight his fight. Like, Abraham loves when guys come at him, throw combinations so he could just shell up and then pick off all of their punches and then hit them with something big, something that catches the eyes of the judges. And so you may score Murray's activity, but you're left with, at the end of the round, that Abraham landed 4 solid right hands and then was really active in the last 30 seconds. And it's like, who do you give the round to? Well, it's obvious it's an Abraham round.
Abraham's one of those, he's like an old school 1920s, just buy the book. I think I made the remark to you that you could buy a textbook from that era that's like how to do boxing, and he'd largely fit that bill. And I don't think that it's people fall into his trap like naively. I think that it's just that he forces that to happen.
Well, I mean, yeah, at this point, he's pretty much mastered how to suck somebody into it, especially with the success he's had.
But I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a close competitive fight. I had the point deduction being the deciding factor for me, with Abraham only just slightly stealing it.
I believe I had it 7-5 for Abraham. And then,
what was the point for?
Low blows. Murray kept hitting low.
I think they both could have had a point, to be fair.
What was the point for Abraham for?
Being time wasty
in Germany.
Yeah. But I think that I was happy to see that Murray looked, I don't know,
shot.
Yeah, exactly. He was still very much a live animal in that fight, and because we've seen people post Golovkin fall to bits, or they do a journeyman or two and then fall to bits, but even at the highest level, Murray's still a very competitive fighter, and I'd watch that again because there's not a hell of a lot going on in that division in terms of, challenge or interest.
Well, it
goes to show you, so much of Murray's problem was making weight. He was just way too big to try to be a middleweight anymore.
Yeah, he was fighting Golovkin, though. I don't care if he showed up at 168. He was not winning that fight.
The point being that neither really lost in terms of stock. They both did the performance that we expected, and you would like them to be competitive against any of the top names within their division, the De Gales, the Smiths, Badu Jack. There's a load of people out in that division, and I think that both the A side and B side would be perfectly suited at home in any of those fights.
I'm still shocked anytime I hear Badu Jack's name come up as in the group of the best at super middleweight. It's so shocking. But respect to him because he's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't take that as a diss because I think Badu Jack's come a long way. Just last thing on this fight. How shocked were you when Abraham was hurt?
I don't know what you mean by that.
He was hurt in the 8th round. Murray landed a right hand, and Abraham did a little.
Shocking, though?
Murray's not known as a puncher. Abraham's known as being a really tough guy.
I think that that's misleading, and it's not about power, is it? As we know, because the people with power mysteriously stop knocking people out at the higher levels, and the people that
That's
are
because of drug
feather-fisted,
testing.
the people that are feather-fisted mysteriously get knockouts here and there, and it's because it's about timing and it's about lots of other elements that get thrown in. Power is probably one of the least important in terms of being able to deliver that shot. It's about the way that you approach the fight, and I think the way that Murray was fighting was smart for the opponent, and he just landed a peach.
Yeah, I was shocked. I didn't foresee that Abraham would expose himself and then actually get wobbled by something. All right, over in Britain, in Manchester, we had Anthony Crolla rematching Darlis Perez for basically a certificate title. And I think this was the most unexpected result of the weekend. Like, there were certainly people out there who thought Crolla could do it again, and I was one of those. But at the same time, by knockout?
Not
By
in
a
that fashion,
body
yeah.
shot knockout where Perez, in the moment he's hit, you can just tell, oh, that is bad.
Yeah,
He
it's
is
done.
very hurt. Even Corolla was probably like, whoa, hold on. Are you sure he's down still?
No, he knew. The second that shot landed, you see it wash over his face.
I thought Dean had a really good point about this fight going into it. And he was basically saying that these guys are just way too similar. They fight the exact same style. They're the same size. There's really nothing that separates them. And we saw that in the first few rounds where it's like they were dead even. Neither guy was really taking the lead in the fight. And it's because they were really similar with what they did. But that body shot, I mean, was incredible. And the only thing I have to say about this fight is that Kroll is just the nicest guy in boxing. Don't you agree? Isn't that why he deserved to win the title?
I thought it was a funny exclamation from the commentary team, but yeah, it was a really feel-good win.
Yeah, and I just want to just brief shout out to Tyrone Nurse and Chris Jenkins who put on another good fight. Wait, let me take that back. Put on a good fight, not another one, but a good fight in comparison to their last dud. Fair, Simon?
Yeah, I think that's the best you'll see Tyrone Nurse.
We're not going to get into that. All right, let's go with the news. So, Vladimir Klitschko has brought out and dusted off Vitaly Klitschko to spar in preparation for Tyson Fury. What do you make of that, Jason?
I thought that was pretty interesting, honestly. It struck a chord with me as far as how he views Fury. To me, it speaks volumes as far as him feeling that Fury is, one of the more legitimate threats that he's fought in recent opposition, even considering Povetkin. I kind of found it a little bit surprising, but, it could just be one of those things where, who knows, maybe Vitaly wanted to just get in the ring a little bit and spar. You know what I mean? I don't know how much to make of it. Maybe I just don't know enough. Is he on as a consistent sparring partner, or is it just one thing they did in the gym for a day?
And
you know what I mean?
My other thing, to go along with what you said, is that maybe Vladimir's having trouble finding people that are close to Fury's height, and this was the best he could do. He's like, big brother, I'm like...
Hey, I totally agree.
I've found everybody, and it's not enough.
Vitaly's I don't know, a polished Fury, because if you look at Fury, you got the people that want to tell you he's this, doughy, uncoordinated guy who gets gifted decisions and X, Y, Z. But he throws versatile shots. He's intriguing with the styles. If you watch his last 5 fights, it's like a different fighter each time. He really is a wild card in terms of what angles he'll use, what shots he'll be favouring, and how he works. And he's massive. So if you were looking for a massive, fairly versatile, intriguing person who throws stuff from different angles and does some odd shots, I think that it leads you to Vitaly Klitschko.
You simultaneously dissed Vitaly and gave Fury mad props.
Did you diss
I don't think
Vitaly?
so. I'm not saying...
because you have a very high opinion of Fury. You have a
well,
higher opinion of Fury than the general.
Jason
higher
does.
than the benchmark general public, but I think that Vitali is like a 10 out of 10 version of what Fury could be.
You know,
Yeah, I don't think
I
could ever get.
don't
I don't
know if I agree with you, but I actually like the comparison because I do think that there's a lot of Vitali in the way Fury fights. You know, there's
That's what I mean. And if see, Vitali is like a robot that is programmed to do boxing, and he's in excellent condition and just practices so hard. And I think Fury's the polar opposite in terms of the fact that he thinks it's just natural ability and that he can show up out of shape against certain journeymen. Certain people aren't worth the effort for him to actually get in the gym for.
Right.
And it shows how they're different, different approaches. But in terms of their raw fundamentals and their instincts and the way that they approach the ring, I think that they have a lot of similarities.
You
All
think
right, well,
Fury?
I was going
What
to
do
move
you
on.
what do you have for an outcome on this fight?
In terms of the fight, it's
What
going
do
to
you-
go 12 and be a decision by Vlad, isn't it?
Well, no, I don't know. I'm asking. I mean, because I know you have a pretty high opinion of Fury's abilities. So
Well, yeah, I think that this is going
it's
to be.
fair to think, and it's a heavyweight boxing match. Anything can happen. Like, you know what I mean? So if you couple those two thoughts, it's not out of the question that you might think he could win.
I'll
I
tell
think
you
it's
what's
gonna
not going to
be
happen.
One of the toughest challenges in a few years, and I think that in his entire resume of fighters, he's probably only fought 5 or 6 people that you could say they were a more credible threat. And for someone that's had nearly 70 odd fights, that's saying something.
No, it's a big.
Of course, the smart money is a Klitschko decision. I think that there's also the chance that Fury takes too many risks because he wants to leave it all in the ring and gets himself stopped.
I'm actually going to bet draw.
No, get out of here.
It's good odds. That's all I'm
You
going to say.
think
Always good.
that
That's-
a Klitschko fight in Germany against Tyson Fury, of all people, would result in a draw?
Correct.
Who have you been speaking to? Who have you
Fury.
been paying? Because
Fury.
I just has he got to you? How? I mean, that's like the least likely thing I can think of.
Exactly. That's why I'm betting it, because it will pay out big.
I'm just staggered. You'd think that. I think it's more likely we
I
see.
didn't say I think
Tyson
that. I'm just saying that I like the odds there. Let's move on, though, because time is ticking. Freddie Roach says he's not done having a very poor stretch and a poor run lately.
not
And
done.
says
More
he's
to come.
willing to face Terrence
more to
Crawford, as Pacquiao's
yeah.
next opponent. Or even as Victor Postal's next opponent. Either way. But Terrence Crawford versus Manny Pacquiao, we've spoken about this plenty of times on this podcast. This is not a good match. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Crawford brings a lot of danger to the division, and it would be wise to avoid him, especially if you're a Roach fighter and you approach things in the way that Roach fighters do. You just don't want any of that. And if you want to be the next Zhu Shiming, go and queue up to go and see Crawford.
That was way meaner than a lot of people might think. What about Timothy Bradley and Jesse Vargas's little encounter yesterday, where Vargas basically crashes Bradley's whatever, and then starts bringing up a rematch, and Bradley gets upset.
This is news to me.
I don't know what he was. I think it was
Well-
Friday, and Bradley was working commentary on the True TV.
Yeah. Bradley was
Right.
working commentary. It was after the fight, and he was just doing an interview for Fight Hype, and Vargas just came over and crashed the interview that Bradley was giving.
And Bradley tried to play promoter and manager.
Well, Bradley was funny, man. He's like, well, tell your manager to call my manager, which is like, hey, call my wife.
I thought Vargas was funny in that he knew he would he was annoying Bradley, and then just kept pestering him. I thought if Vargas could actually
like a
do that
fly.
in interviews and stuff, and just let everybody know, I'm pretty much a troll, he would get
Right.
so much more fans, and people would actually want to watch him box, and that Bradley rematch would be huge. But I'm sure we're never going to see that side of Vargas. It was a good side of him, though.
He might have had a couple drinks in him. Yeah.
Well, that helps if you're going to be a troll. What do you guys think about Deontay Wilder saying that he is ready for Anthony Joshua? And do you guys think that the WBC allows Wilder to bypass Alexander Povetkin in order to fight Anthony Joshua?
Yes, I think that they do allow that, and I think that they'd be silly to. They're barking up the wrong tree here, aren't they?
By trying to let Povetkin get his hands on the title.
Well,
No,
I mean,
by
they've
trying to
come to the
bypass.
decision that Povetkin is almost a certain loss, but Anthony brings a big amount of popularity and hype because he's a very well-regarded fighter, but he's also green, also new, hasn't been in long wars, hasn't had that pro experience. You know, you can count on two hands the amount of rounds he's done because he gets people out of there so quickly, and they're hoping that Deontay's professional experience in gutting out wins like with the Stiverne fight will come into play, and he'll be able to, you know, school him over 12 where he, you know, can't let AJ. But they're wrong. You know, they've miscalculated.
I agree. I think Josh was a terrible fight for Wilder. Only that there are guys out there that are much easier fights that even hold a higher ranking for
Exactly.
Wilder to fight. Why fight the unknown guy like Joshua, where basically you're going to have zero film study on him? It's like, what do you have, like 10 minutes of total action to look at to find a flaw in what Joshua does?
Call up Jennings.
Yeah, fight Jennings. Fight
Thompson
Glasgow.
Get Glasgow in.
No, you can't call Thompson because he just lost to
get
Malik
Parker
Scott
in.
of all people. No, don't get Parker. Don't get Parker.
I just think if you want to go for a really phenomenal up-and-coming person who's got a lot of praise,
then,
it's going to be Parker before it's AJ.
Yeah,
well,
definitely.
you know, in that Malik Scott Tony Thompson fight, the entire broadcast was just like, the winner of this fight is moving on to fight Wilder. Just a heads up to everybody. Like, that's the entire broadcast premise was, this is a fight for Wilder. And the winner goes on to fight Wilder.
Well, the good thing is that we're the only ones that watched it, so nobody's going to know.
Nobody's
going to
knows
expect
that it's going to be Wilder. Malik Scott too. Okay.
Don't you want to see that rematch though?
And the Phantom Punch.
With no Phantom Punch this time? I think it's a
No
good fight.
Phantom Punch.
What about the fact that John Pascal?
I don't know, man. AJ's so young. It would kind of like, in Wilder, you know, Wilder brings in good viewing numbers. If AJ comes to the U.S. and like knocks out Wilder, holy crap! I think you've
got a Lennox
him
at that point.
Yeah.
But wait, guys, I figured it out. This is Al Heyman's plan. Is Joshua, you're going to get this cool fight for the heavyweight title, with the one exception that you are now my property in America. And I'll give you your European fights every once a year, but for the most part, you're here with me.
As far as I know, he's signed something like a 3-year exclusive with Eddie.
Eddie said that he likes and thinks it's good for his fighters to sign with Al Heyman, so I don't think Eddie would have a problem with that.
Sharing him.
It would get in the way.
Yeah, well, he's sharing DeGale and Lee Selby.
Yeah, that's true.
And Al Heyman's just a manager. He's not a promoter, so there's no conflict there. You know what I mean?
And if we can see that these afternoon fights do big numbers, you could put AJ and let him fight in England and just do NBC noon fights for him, where it's prime time in the UK. Everybody gathers around to watch Joshua fight on a Saturday afternoon. Could be huge. And,
you haven't been on since Frampton Quigg got announced. I mean, come on, Simon.
We've got
fantastic.
We've got some great fights coming up over the next few months. It's
man.
Unbelievable time to be a British fan.
Well, I mean, that was until February, so that's going to suck for you guys waiting.
Yeah, but there's so much to fill our appetite on the way there.
Not to mention...
I get the sense that Khan Brooks even going to get signed in the next few months.
You heard it here first, guys. If Khan Brooks gets announced, it was here on this podcast that Simon said it's getting announced.
It has to. Neither really have too many viable options outside each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're at the point
and that
now.
penny's going to drop.
How huge would it be if it was a Saturday afternoon card? Wilder versus Joshua and Khan versus Brook next March.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started recording the podcast, we had talked about how they both have, so many other options and so many
Mm.
other ways to go, and the fight will still be big a year from now. Like, I think we're at that point now.
Well, this
I
is,
think
since then, Khan has had his like struggle against Algieri,
right. And
and
Brooks
then
just kind of been
Brooks
Brooke.
bombed out of his fight, and so I think
Yeah.
that just the elements, the stars are sort of aligning that way.
It's coming. Yes, it's coming. Yeah.
Okay. What about John Pascal training with Freddie Roach now? You think that makes any difference for his fight with Sergey Kovalev?
Just get knocked out sooner.
No, I think maybe. I think this is one of those times
Simon?
where, yeah, I
Of all
know.
people?
I like to think I'm balanced. I know I'm quite
I
stilted
took
in my views, but
I took Simon's stance just so he didn't have to.
yeah, I think that what Pascal did that made the fight interesting the first time around was bring a sort of raw physicality that Kovalev didn't like and wanted to bulldoze. And so Kovalev got knocked out of his boxing stance and into his brawling stance, and that's where Pascal managed to have pockets of success. And, if a fight doesn't have Freddie Roach written all over it like that one, then I don't know what does, because that is exactly down to the ground what he needs.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but he's already, proven to not be able to handle the power of Kovalev.
Correct, but he wasn't. He did, in moments, have him unsettled, and if he was able to capitalize on that further, then who knows? There's no way he's winning a decision here. But the question is, can he hurt and potentially knock him out? I don't reckon. But if anyone's going to get him ready for that, it's Freddie.
Okay, so this year, 2015, is clearly not Freddie Roach's year. I don't think he wins Trainer of the Year. But if Pascal
sure he
wins
still will.
against Kovalev, but if Pascal wins next year against Kovalev, if he beats Kovalev, does Freddie Roach win Trainer of the Year in 2016?
Absolutely.
Even if Pacquiao loses to Crawford?
Yes.
I say yes too. Jason, you're the only one that hasn't co-signed.
Does he win Trainer of the Year? How the fuck do I know? Like, there's going to be so many other fights that could possibly happen.
The question is, did he train some people that year? And if the answer's yes, then he'll win Trainer of the Year.
Well, they
Yeah,
have
sure.
to have
Right.
won. At least one guy has to
They'll
have
justify
won.
it on
One-
Postal, won't they?
One,
Oh yeah. Roach might
Right.
actually win.
Of course he will.
All
Who
right,
else is
guys.
gonna-
Postal.
So let's move on to the previews. And if you want to listen to full-on previews with like details and stuff, you can listen to the solo other episode that we put out, where all the fights are in detail previewed. But we're gonna just mention most and talk about a few. So Juan Hangman Yothin, he fights Young Gil Bay, a Korean guy, this Tuesday. And then this weekend we have the big fight. Actually, I skipped over Erzlan Dilara versus Jan Zavik on Wednesday. Anything to say about that,
That
guys?
is the big fight.
Yeah, guys,
That
I
is-
messed, sorry, I
I
messed
thought
up.
that was what you were getting at.
No, the big fight's next. But do you guys have anything to say about Laura?
He's out.
Okay. Okay. So, all right, guys, the big fight this Saturday. Jamal Charlo defends.
He's no Rigondeaux.
Yeah, I know that's what I'm looking forward to on Saturday.
Will be fighting Wilkie Camfort, and on the undercard is Earl Spence against Alejandro Barrera. This is a PBC card. Then there's James DeGale versus Lucien Boutte.
I like DeGale Boutte. I think that's a good fight. I think Boutte might be a little past his prime. And,
A little?
DeGale's, obviously
In the
on
prime
a
of
win
his career.
streak here. Yep. So I definitely favor DeGale, and I'm very happy. I'll be very happy for him to get another win and to keep moving forward.
You know, it's funny.
And now
you
that
don't-
Andre Ward's out of the division, there's nothing really not much to worry about.
He wants to finish him and finish him early.
Oh, he might want to. That's irrelevant because he will.
So, I mean, he effectively wants to leave a calling card for Froch. Froch has been toying with a comeback, and it's either going to be Golovkin or some. If he does do a comeback, it'll be one fight for a final hurrah. And I think that DeGale and co will want to send a statement by doing what Froch did, but quicker.
Froch has had such a weird career, and if he comes back and was able to beat DeGale, either by knockout or he wins a decision, but if he did that, you wouldn't like. It would be such a weird place to put Froch because it's like he's done all this great stuff, and yet he still got outclassed by Andre Ward.
How does that devalue him?
I'm not saying it does, but at the same time, it's like it's such a weird. He's a weird fighter, in that he'll have a weird ranking in history where it's like, yeah, he did all this great stuff, but he did lose like badly to Andre Ward.
Yeah, I think differently because people just justify that sort of thing on people they don't like for whatever reason. And it's typically people that they've predicted to lose and they keep being wrong when they're winning, that they throw that sort of stuff out. And that's not the case with DeGale. No one predicts DeGale to lose and then he wins. No one, he's kind of what you expect to happen. And as a result, no one keeps going on about Groves, and his loss to Groves years back. But the difference is with Froch, he had a period where he sort of took impossible steps up in quality of opposition and continually delivered the goods, surprising everyone.
I think the one difference with DeGale is, and especially a difference between him and Groves, but basically him and a lot of other fighters, and I think Canelo falls into this too. DeGale consistently looks better each time you see him. I mean, the past year and a half, I think DeGale's gotten increasingly better and very obviously better. At least his ability has improved in the ring, and it's been really obvious. And he's legitimately one of the best super middleweights in the world now. Maybe I would say number 2 now that Andre Ward has left the division. On the undercard, light heavyweight fight between Eleider Alvarez and one of the favorites of this podcast, Isaac Chilemba. Alvarez might be in trouble. He's a counterpuncher. He does have power. But Chilemba is one of those guys that he's like real rugged. He throws a lot of punches. It's going to be a tough fight. I don't think this is going to be an easy fight to score either.
It's silly matchmaking putting anyone in with Chilemba.
Chilemba's a kind of guy that needs to be fighting title holders because those are the only guys that are going to completely and decisively beat him. Probably. Like there's the highest percentage of how he gets beat, obviously, is by title holders. Not guys like Alvarez.
He's like a Kamitsky, Your prospect probably isn't good enough, and you're silly to try and use this name to catapult yourself up there.
Yep, and those are the fights. I mean, unless you want to hear about Pedro Guevara, but if you are, you're going to have to listen to the other episode. Quick, guys, what's your guess for how that fight goes down? Pedro Guevara versus Yu Kimura.
I'm not familiar enough to try and guess this one.
It's Guevara. Come on, guys. Don't
Guevara.
Don't insult
I said
me.
It.
All right.
I said it.
So what have we learned from this podcast? One is that Canelo is not going to fight Golovkin unless he wants to.
Which there's a potential that he does. 2,
the biggest threat to James DeGale is fighting Arthur Abraham in Germany. 3, and most importantly, there isn't a nicer guy in boxing than Anthony Crolla, and we're glad he won.
And 4, the Lara hype train's been derailed.
It hasn't even been derailed by Lara. It was derailed by Rigondeaux, who ruined boxing for Cubans in America.
That's what I meant. I meant the Rigondeaux hype train's been derailed.
No, that train actually did not get derailed. It just stopped. People realized the car got invented.
We don't need this horse and buggy anymore.
Man, I really like Rigondeaux. I love the Rigondeaux Donaire fight. It's one of my favorite fights to watch. But that fight yesterday was just so disappointing that Rigondeaux fought the way he did. So now that we finished all the boxing, let's just talk about Survivor Series.
Ugh.
So who do we have winning tonight? I'm going to read off the matches, and you guys are going to pick the winners. You guys ready?
Yeah, go on.
I know Simon. I was going, wow. Simon's in. All right, let's go.
You're in. This is predictions. Okay, so we have I'm reading off of the subreddit semifinals match. So this is probably a tournament.
The Undertaker?
Roman Reigns versus Alberto Del Rio. So
Don't know either of them. Don't care.
okay, so Simon, you picked Del Rio because you're a fan of Mexicans.
Shit.
Jason, who do you got?
Pick. I'll take the other one. Fine.
Reigns.
I take Sergey Lipinski.
The fact that you remember that name is hilarious. Semifinals match: Dean Ambrose versus Kevin Owens.
Ambrose all the way. You'd be a fool to think
Max.
otherwise.
Enthusian.
Jason, do you agree or disagree?
With Thomas Enthusian? No, I agree with Simon.
Oh, yeah. And then the finals are TBD versus TBD. So it's likely...
I picked the first TBD.
All right. So Jason's going with TBD. All right. And then the most important match on the match card, Charlotte versus Paige for the championship.
Paige.
These are women, I believe.
Yeah, Charlotte's not. Yeah, I didn't guess by the name Charlotte, but Paige is probably, just a league above where Charlotte is. So,
well, Charlotte's the champion entering, so she probably won it basically off of a vacant situation.
I have Holly Holm.
Holly Holm. All right, good. And then another match that I'm sure you guys cannot wait for, and this is the last one that we're going to go over, Brothers of Destruction, Kane and Undertaker versus the Wyatt family, which is Bray Wyatt, obviously, and Bran Strowman.
You'd think, obviously, Kane and the Undertaker would have this, but they're a benevolent family. Kane's been through a lot. He's journeyed through hell to get back into the ring, and I think that what the story is tonight is that they want to help elevate these guys to become a credible opponent one day, and so they're going to kind of let them take it. And I think that, to be honest, they don't agree on this plan, and between them, they're going to be bickering, and an internal conflict in the Brothers of Destruction is going to untie them. So
Simon is going with Wyatt family. And Jason, do you agree with Simon or disagree?
I just have a question. Is the Undertaker still the same Undertaker that I was watching 25 years ago?
Of course he is.
Yes, he is.
Then I have to go against him because that was 25 years ago.
He's only 50. On his Wikipedia page, he's 50 years old.
He's been through a lot of iterations.
Married
he's done
3 times. Can I go through his names?
Yeah, go on.
So there was the Commando, there was Kane, the Undertaker, Mark Callis, Mean Mark.
So Kane, but now Kane and the Undertaker are two different people? Although one of his aliases used to be Kane?
Yep. The Master of Pain, Dice Morgan, which I'd really like to see what that looked like, the Punisher, Texas Red, and then the Undertaker. Texas Red sounds like Canelo's American-born kid's nickname.
All right, so we're going to have a winner for next week's episode, and it's whoever could guess in the Reddit commentary thread what Isaac Chilemba's birth name is without using BoxRec.
Now I got to look it up because I don't even know that.
That will be the winner of the podcast.
Is it an
You've already
name?
won if you've listened this far.
I think most people listen this far. And then where I don't see his where did you find his real name?
Just click on his profile.
All right, thank you for listening. You can leave comments to us. You can message us. You can
remind people that Cotto was born in Rhode Island. Just tell your neighbor, tell a friend.
Assuming that they ordered the fight, which I bet you they didn't. How many people hit you guys up for streams yesterday?
None, because I don't roll that way.
Was I the only one that was getting text messages from people who don't even watch boxing to find a stream?
No, everybody I know was either in a movie theater or at my house. I don't know a lot of people.
Unless you're a massive boxing fan, Cotto Canelo doesn't really move the needle here for the UK fans.
Yeah, and neither will Golovkin, Cotto, or Canelo.
No, well, you say that. I was in the pub earlier today, And a mate I know that's into his boxing said, I wanted to talk to you about the fight last night, the big one. I said, which one's that? And he said, Crawler.
Of course. You act like
No,
he said like
no.
Tabisu Mishinu versus Duradola. It's not like that.
And then I explained Cotto was fighting, and he's, Cotto obviously won. I said, no, he didn't. And it's like, oh, wow, no, that's obviously someone of note then.
That's-
And then he asked, is he going to fight that Russian kid who's been steamrolling everyone?
The Russian
Golova,
kid.
Golova, and well,
Yeah, you
he's
gotta
kind
give
of
him
in the right
credit.
area. Yeah, absolutely.
gotta give him
Well,
some credit.
my point is that he was unaware of Canelo Cotto existing, but knew that there was a Russian guy steamrolling everyone. So
And the big fight for him that weekend was
Krulla.
so
But
you gotta give him some credit.
he sounds like he knows just as much about wrestling as we do.
I ran into I was in New York City earlier today. I was talking to one of the security guards at this name dropping. New
That's a
York
name
City.
drop the security guard.
I was talking to one of the security guards at the event that I was at because they were like pretending to like shadow box almost. I was like, oh, you guys watched the fight last night? It was nice. Was able to talk to him about the fight. One of the guys had seen it. One of them hadn't. And, they were both just completely shocked that Cotto had lost. Just could not believe it. So that was kind of funny.
Oh, wait, you were in New
because,
York City. No wonder.
Yeah.
My story, which is similar, is that last night before the fight, I was walking through the market, and the market that I go to is right on the border of East LA. And of course, as I'm walking through the market, specifically down the soda and beer aisles, I can hear people talking about the fight amongst each other. Obviously, though, I did not talk to anybody.
Yeah, the local
being the
package
social
stores
hermit
by
that
my
you are.
house-
Correct.
Right. The local package stores by my house actually had a like Cotto Canelo poster out. I think I mentioned this last podcast.
And you stole it?
So no, I was thinking about going in there and just asking them for it though. 'Cause I'm sure they're
Offer them $5 or whatever. They're not going to need it, are they?
I'm not gonna offer anything. No. I'm sure it's going in the trash.
You can send it to Dean for Christmas.
Exactly.
Wait, is Canelo wearing clothes?
He won't want it then.
Ah.
No.
All right, thanks for listening.